this slide, please? Yes, Aditya is currently working as an explainable AI researcher at KU Leuven, Belgium, with an overall experience of 8.5 years in data science, machine learning, Internet of Things, and software engineering. Prior to his current role, he worked in various roles in organizations like West Pharma, Microsoft, and Intel to democratize AI adoption for industrial solutions. As the AI lead at West Pharma, he contributed to forming the AI Center of Excellence and managed and led a global team of 10 plus members focused on building AI products. I think right now he's working as an adjunct faculty at Upgrad and content SME for the past 3 years. We have the LinkedIn profile. I would request all of you to follow Aditya. But without any further delay, I would hand it over to our expert, Aditya, to lead the session. Over to you, Aditya.
Yeah, thanks, Aditya. Thanks, Aditya, for the introduction. And I'm quite excited to discuss about the topic. If we move to the next slide, please. Yeah, all right. So let's start with a brief introduction on the agenda. Now, I think like all of us in this particular forum knows about the impact which Gen AI is going to create, but these are some top favorite of mine where Gen AI can actually contribute a lot towards product and project growth. But of course, there are other areas or other avenues as well in which Gen AI is being explored. And there are a few more which would come maybe in near future. But to me, these are my top favorite 5 areas in terms of Gen AI making an impact in product and project development. So I always start with Gen AI being used as a key element towards accelerating innovation. So especially when we talk about like various factors of driving progress towards making a product, the very first thing comes towards outlining the key elements that can be used to define a certain product roadmap or maybe a certain project plan. So Gen AI can definitely help as an assistant in terms of coming up with maybe innovative product features, innovative ideas towards implementing something which is a real need for users. So that's why I always start with this point. But another area where Gen AI is being extremely useful is in terms of boosting productivity through various automation. So for example, let's say if we are making a presentation slide deck, it requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of, maybe some thought process involved towards creating an excellent presentation. But with Gen AI, in order to create all these maybe assets or graphics towards explaining some ideas, Gen AI can completely automate it. And something which used to take hours can maybe take just few minutes using Gen AI. So we will talk more about it as well. But boosting business productivity is something where Gen AI is being actively used and is being able to make, like a lot of good impact around it. Then another key area is about enhancing customer experience and personalization. So more and more product companies are trying to use generative AI to provide personalized recommendations or personalized, suggestions, considering the exact needs of each customer. For example, if let's say a certain customer has some specific needs, then generative AI methods can actually be used to create real-time recommendation. And it is quite effective in terms of meeting certain user requirements, which let's say are changing quite frequently. So for personalizing, like all these aspects, Gen AI is extremely useful. Then another area is data-driven decision making. So most of the times, like coming up with a new product idea or coming up with a solid roadmap for a product requires a lot of, like initial exploration or going through a lot of market research documents and then coming up with a solid process. So that's where Gen AI can actually streamline the process as well. So coming up with, like good market insights from existing customer feedback, and even like from the existing data which is there as part of the organization, Gen AI can also make a huge impact. So helping business stakeholders to make data-driven decision-making is a key area where Gen AI can be actively involved. And last but not the least, Gen AI can also come up with various methods or various approaches for increasing team collaboration and creativity. So, many organizations are also using generative AI-based discussion forums where the employees, let's say, feedback or suggestions can be actively considered, and later the same can be summarized to high-level management. So, like to get the overall suggestions or sentiments of various employees, and based on that, necessary team collaboration efforts or team collaboration approaches can be considered. Okay, so these are the top 5 areas that I think would be extremely useful for a product manager or for a project manager to know about. We will talk about them in more detail in the next few minutes. All right, so the first one, accelerating innovation, and product development. So when we talk about accelerating innovation, one of the key things where Gen AI can help is idea generation or brainstorming for certain product pitches. So whenever we have certain, let's say, customer meetings, it's also important to highlight the key areas where a certain product can help. So Gen AI can actively, assume the role of, let's say, a product, let's say, a manager, and prepare a nice product pitching document where different areas or different, I would say, impact areas where the particular product can help various customers or, create certain values for a certain organization. It can mention those areas and come up with various innovative examples, which is extremely useful in product pitch discussions. Okay. Then the idea of creating prototypes. Now, most of the cases when a new product is being developed, it starts with the prototyping phase. So usually the usual route is to get help from maybe certain UX designers, UX researchers, starting with some maybe low fidelity prototypes and then further developing it so that the main idea can be, portrayed through such wireframes or certain prototypes which are more interactive, and then it's a better way to pitch the idea. So here also Gen AI can actually make a big impact by automating the process of creating prototypes, especially the low fidelity ones. So coming up with the design ideas, design guidelines, automating with certain, let's say, graphics, certain low fidelity prototype, Gen AI based methods are extremely useful. And there are many organizations who are trying to integrate Gen AI into their environment. For example, Figma is a very popular platform for designers to develop certain low fidelity or design prototypes. So Figma is one of the popular forums where Gen AI is being actively integrated. So instead of manually making all the prototype based on certain guidelines or certain prompts, these platforms can actually come up with an initial skeleton prototype which can further be customized. So it significantly improves, or I would say makes the process much faster, and based on that can be further customized. Then the other thing is, the last slide. Yeah. So another area where Gen AI can actually help is in terms of evaluating various ideas. So sometimes we might have extremely good ideas for certain products, or even it could be the roadmap of a particular product, but we might need additional opinion. So rather than directly jumping into discussions or meetings with the customer, there could be an initial stage where Gen AI can be used to scrutinize or evaluate certain ideas. So let's say if the product owner wants to have an investor meeting, maybe. So there, the product owner would also need to convince the benefits of the product. So Gen AI can actually take the role of the customer or maybe the investor and then ask certain questions which can help in the preparation process for such meetings. So these are certain areas where Gen AI can extremely be useful. And many companies or many organizations are actually coming up with certain tools and platforms that can be used for all these use cases. Okay, so the next slide, please. All right. So the next area is about boosting productivity. Like all of us would have used ChatGPT already in terms of coming up with some responses. But in general, generative AI has a powerful ability of automating certain repetitive tasks. For example, maybe generating a report, or maybe summarizing a certain meeting, or creating the minutes of the meeting, and then based on that, making certain action items. So many tools and platforms are trying to even solve these use cases. For example, I know Microsoft Teams is working on an idea of automating the process of generating the minutes of the meeting. And on top of that, if a certain person should have some kind of action items that should be assigned, they're trying to come up with a feature of integrating the summarized minutes of the meeting and creating a task back into Azure DevOps, which is the DevOps platform, which is typically used for managing various products and projects. So these kind of use cases can actually be done. And this can also help in terms of business productivity. So it can save several thousands of hours for various employees and make the process much more simplified. Then another area is about generating certain graphics or assets for certain reports, for certain PowerPoint presentation. There are many image generation tools which can create extremely compelling and aesthetic designs or graphics that can be used for various kind of presentation. Even some of these platforms are trying to come up with automated generative AI features. Like in PowerPoint, you might have seen something like the design ideas, which can actually suggest some nice designs from an initial version of the slides that we need. So similar features are being integrated in other tools as well. Then creating an automated product roadmap or maybe a project planning document. So generative AI can actually be used for coming up with a nice skeleton roadmap, which can further be customized, but they can come up with that initial roadmap. And many like companies are also working towards automating the idea of creating the roadmap on something like a spreadsheet or an Excel file, and then automatically taking that into a DevOps platform. So it's like using GenAI, using certain prompts and certain inputs about the particular project or the product. An initial version of the roadmap can be created in something like a spreadsheet, and the same spreadsheet can be directly uploaded to the DevOps platform, which can create or assign certain tasks for various developers, various other people who will be involved in the project. So it can save a lot of time, by the way, with this. Then slowly, many organizations are trying to integrate all these individual components that we discussed, and they're trying to come up with a more connected experience kind of a platform, where from a meeting automatically, the minutes of the meeting can be taken, the action items can be generated from there, and maybe from the key action items, additional feature requests or additional tasks can be created in the Kanban boards, which is typically used in product management or in project management. So therefore, a particular sprint, certain tasks can be created and automatically assigned to various developers. So all these things are actually happening. So it's pretty important for us to also know about the various developments that is happening around business productivity. But I would say that business productivity is something where Gen AI has made a huge impact. And in the next few years, there would be even more compelling experience that can be created with the help of Gen AI. So the next slide, please. All right. Now coming about enhancing the customer experience. Because as project managers or as product managers, I would say the main thing that we try to ensure is to have a compelling customer experience. So using Gen AI, various things can be done. For example, personalizing certain contents for maybe email or maybe some product notification or messaging, especially which is more fine-tuned or more personalized for a certain customer. So the real customer needs can be easily analyzed in an automated way using Gen AI, and accordingly, their feedback can be considered for personalizing or maybe making all these emails or product messages much more fine-tuned for them. Now, in many cases, like it is required that a support team should be there like 24/7. but managing a support team for 24/7 can be extremely difficult. And as a result, Gen AI can actually help as the first point of contact in such situations which requires an active support for the customer. So Gen AI can actually provide anytime customer query through certain chatbots or through virtual assistant. Now, there are many organizations who are trying to reimagine the entire process of providing support to various customers. Now, chatbot is definitely one way, but many customers or many organizations are trying to even come up with, augmented reality to create a more, interactive bot or an assistant who can help in terms of resolving customer queries. So this is an extremely interesting area where many organizations are trying to explore generative AI in terms of creating a digital twin of the entire support team. So I actually liked it pretty much, and many interesting work would come in this particular area in the next few years. And apart from that, from the various customer interactions that happen, Gen AI can be actively used for creating customer insights or analyzing the behavior of various customers. So especially, like in many cases, capturing the user requirements can be very complicated. Sometimes the customers themselves are not exactly aware of, what they're looking for. So in these cases, generative AI can be extremely helpful in terms of analyzing their behavior and coming up with an initial set of insights that can be used. So especially it is useful because, I would say maybe 20 years back, in order to have a nice customer insights dashboard, we mostly relied on more structured data sets, which were obtained from, I don't know, maybe various market insights databases or, various online tools, which actually gave structured data sets. But now, from the responses, the textual responses, which is more unstructured in format, a lot of good insights can be generated. So the vast amount of unstructured data, which is available, in the internet or in various other external sources, can actually be leveraged very easily using generative AI, and that can help us create more compelling customer insights. And like accordingly, it can be analyzed very easy. Okay. So the next slide, please. All right. Now coming to data-driven decision making, using Gen AI, the entire process of data collection can be further streamlined, as I was mentioning. So it's not just like spending hours of times to curate the data, but generative AI can actually be used effectively to collect data from various unstructured sources, which is like completely unorganized, and it can be used as a process to curate data itself. And then the curated data can be stored within the organization to create more meaningful insights from it. So it can be used not only as a way to collect data, but also to process data from various sources like customer feedback, various project metrics, or other user analytics that is generated from maybe certain applications. Now, Gen AI can also be used to easily identify certain preference of customers. And one thing generative AI can also help is to explore, richer insights from various competitors for a particular customer and get more robust market trends. So, especially like, analyzing various other organizations which are maybe who are working in a similar line on maybe a competitor product. Generative AI can be easily used to analyze such marketing trends and suggest maybe features or suggest certain requirements which can actually be a game changer for the particular organization. So generative AI in general can definitely streamline the process of data-driven decision making and make the process of coming up with more rich data-driven insights in a much faster way. So the next one, please. All right. Now coming to enhancing team collaboration. Typically, many organizations are trying to use ChatGPT to generate certain ideas of product features, maybe some marketing contents, and as well as collectively keeping everyone in the loop to come up with a more collaborative idea generation process. Okay. So it's like previously, let's say, without the use of such generative AI methods, capturing the individual feedback from various stakeholders was done in a very isolated way, and compiling everything together and then making something which is much more robust considering everyone's feedback was a much difficult process. But now, with the help of various generative AI tool, uh, coming up with a more collaborative idea proposal is, I would say, much easier. And as a result, these tools can also provide certain real-time suggestions in terms of maybe improving a certain design, improving certain code or content that is getting created. And teams can actually use the AI generated feedback as well to iterate and improve these things in a much more faster way. So it's like generative AI tools or agents can actually assume the role of a reviewer, and they can also assume the role of a customer. But at the same time, they can also assume the role of an assistant. So because of this versatile nature of generative AI, it can really help in terms of team collaboration. And furthermore, I would say, like, when we are working with teams from different time zones, from different geographical domains, sometimes it is actually difficult to collaborate effectively. And that's where generative AI can come in, where, generative AI methods can be used as a helpful personal assistant for each of the team members or stakeholders. And then combine all the ideas or combine all the feedback together to give a much more broader view. Okay. So these are certain areas where generative AI is actually making a big impact. So the next one, please. All right. So these are some organizations who are working towards developing generative AI, models as well as certain tools. But one thing I just wanted to mention is the scope of generative AI is not just restricted to the AI models that are being trained and developed. There are many organizations who are trying to come up with different variants of Gen AI product. For example, Hugging Face is one of the prominent example where they are trying to come up with a marketplace for different type of generative AI models, which can be used for various purposes. And they are trying to work towards making this marketplace much more robust, so that they don't just provide the generative AI models for various application perspective, but they are also trying to come up with various tools which can be used to evaluate all these models in a more robust way. Then we all know about OpenAI. OpenAI is also trying to come up with various type of models which can be used for various applications. But then OpenAI is also trying to come up with various platforms which can allow users to use all these AI models as a service, but also use the infrastructure that is being provided or that is being used by OpenAI for more, let's say, private deployment of all these models. Then there are certain organizations like Lamini. They're trying to come up with a framework which comes as an intermediate layer between the AI models as well as the, let's say, the other components of the application. And with these, let's say, intermediate tools or toolkits which are being provided, most of these applications can be developed in a much more robust way. So there are, like, I would say, increasing opportunities which will be there in the Gen AI space. Many more different type of product areas or avenues will be created where like various tools, various platforms would come up, and at the end of the day, I would say it will really revolutionize the use of AI for various applications, like irrespective of the domain, irrespective of the type of application or users using them. Generative AI would definitely make a big impact in all the areas. The next one, please. All right. Now, this is something which I often discuss whenever I talk about generative AI. Now, generative AI definitely has a huge potential, but at the same time, many of these generative AI models have a lot of problem as well with issues such as bias and fairness with the data that is being trained. At the same time, with something like hallucination, which is a common problem in large language models that is seen, as well as lack of interpretability or explainability for which is required for various decision making. So that's why whenever I talk about generative AI in general, I also try to suggest about the responsible usage of generative AI. And as a result, certain organizations are trying to come up with various standards which will make the entire process of using generative AI much more, like I would say, responsible. And there could be like additional, government rules, regulations, or compliance related guidelines which will be established, and using like certain frameworks like this, we can ensure that generative AI models are being used responsibly. So we need to be always cautious about the data that we use. We need to ensure that the data that we use is fair. First of all, it is well diverse so that it can be like it considers from various demographics, and as well as it is representative of various elements which is there as part of the methods. Then on top of that, we need to ensure that whenever we use data from various sources, we are storing in a responsible way as well. Any leakage that happens could cause massive problems. So there needs to be like a lot of regulatory aspects or regulatory policies established which can ensure that generative AI models or applications are being used responsibly. So a few areas where most of the organizations are focusing. One is interpretability and explainability. So whenever generative AI is being used for decision-making process, uh, explainability becomes a necessity. So many organizations are also trying to come up with certain tools or methods that can further explain the decision-making process of such complicated AI models. Okay. Another aspect is the sustainability part. Like whenever generative AI models are trained, it kind of depends on huge amount of data and requires a very strong infrastructure support to train such powerful models. But when we are training these models for like long hours, or considering the computational complexity of these models, uh, they do have some environmental impact, to be honest. And to ensure that like the sustainability part of the model is there, many researchers are also trying to come up with various ways that can optimize the process of training such models. Okay. And apart from that, robustness related to the use of the models, the systems that are developed using the models. So it needs to go through continuous monitoring, continuous evaluation of the performance. Then regarding bias and fairness, we need to ensure that the data that we use is free from certain common biases that are there. It needs to be fair so that the decision making that happens is kind of relevant for everyone and not just for a specific group of users. Coming to the cybersecurity aspect, of course, cybersecurity is also an essential topic, and many organizations are trying to ensure that there are no leaks within all these generative AI models. Like, for example, there is a very popular model from OpenAI, which is still in the pre-release phase, I would say. It's called as OpenAI Sora, which can be used to generate videos rather than images. It can be used for generating videos. But OpenAI is making sure that there is no leakage in terms of the security. So they're going through a very stringent evaluation process to ensure that there is no data leakage, and whatever content that is being generated, it is being used wisely. Okay, so the privacy aspects, the safety aspects also come in into all these things. So that's mostly it, I would say, in terms of the responsible practice. But we need to ensure that we are aware of the limitations of Gen AI as well. But to be honest, there is huge potential. And in the next few years, I'm quite sure that using Gen AI is something which everyone will be doing, and knowing about them is even more important, especially as product managers or project managers, so that it can be used effectively to give the best experience for the customers, but at the same time provide the maximum value for the products and projects. Okay. So that's mostly it from my side. And if there are questions, comments, I'll be happy to discuss them as well.
Thank you so much, Aditya, for enlightening our audience today with your expertise. There was a question from one of the people in the audience. I'm going to just read it out to you.
Yeah.
What are some of the best prompts you recommend for project management effectiveness?
Okay. So I would say, like, rather than the best prompts, it's the format of the prompting which is important. So typically, whenever we are using a certain large language model, there is a problem of hallucination, which is quite common. But to prevent that, we need to ensure that the context in which the models or let's say, the chatbot should function is clearly provided. If the context is ambiguous, if the context is not clear, those are certain situations in which large language models can actually go wrong. So we need to ensure that the context is clearly defined. The role of the agent should be clearly mentioned, clearly specified. The task should be clearly provided. And on top of that, if there are certain guidelines which the agent needs to follow to produce the output, should also be clearly specified. So rather than the exact prompts, I would say a format like this, which ensures that the prompt is clearly specified following these best prompting guidelines, that could give better results.
Okay, thank you, Aditya. We have a few more questions. What are the biggest challenges in making deep learning models truly interpretable?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. But maybe just to explain it to all our audience as well, typically it is believed that the more complicated the algorithm is, the less interpretable it becomes, which means that explaining the working of the model could become difficult when we try to increase the complexity of the algorithm. So deep learning models are typically certain algorithms which work in multiple layers. And even within one layer, there could be multiple individual nodes. And there is a lot of computational operation which is happening. So as a result, it is believed that making deep learning models become like interpretable is actually challenging. Now, to answer this question, what could be the biggest challenges? Of course, there could be many, but I always try to follow a data-centric approach, because using the data set, we can actually get a lot of good insights about the nature of the data. And the quality of the models ultimately depend on the quality of the training data set. So if we are able to provide or generate various type of explainability from the training data sets, we can use such insights to explain the working of the model. Now, in some cases, the underlying, let's say, inner working of the algorithms are also explored to actually visualize or to actually estimate the overall performance of the model across each of these layers of the model. And it really depends on the users who would be finally using the interpretability insights to finally either improve the model or coming up with a better decision making process. But generally, I would start from generating explainability from the training data sets and then go towards more model centric approaches, which tries to explore the inner working of the algorithm. And on top of that, we need to ensure for which purposes this explainability will be used. Okay, like whether it will be for a decision making process or maybe it's for debugging an existing model. So we need to ensure the main purpose, and based on that, we generally try to select certain strategies to make make these models much more explainable.